night. It's time for Use It or Lose It. Looking forward to this show. Plenty to talk about after what was a very exciting weekend. The Springboks taking the Rugby Championship. Australia giving New Zealand something of a hiding. I can tell you that one hurt my pocket quite a bit. Pleased to say I did make some of it back on the Springboks. Well, on tonight's show, we're going to be talking about the Springbok team in particular. One thing that Russie's got now is a headache in certain positions in terms of not that he doesn't have guys for that position, but that he's actually got a couple of players performing. It's going to be very interesting to see our starting lineup in New Zealand. We're going to talk about that, including the headline act, as I'll call it, which is what we named the show, and that is Bongi v. Marx. Who's going to start and who's going to come off the bench? I don't think it's very clear-cut that. We'll discuss that one. We'll also talk about Barrett's red card, plenty of debate about that on Twitter, and then a general temperature check going into the World Cup. But let me first introduce the panel. I'm going to start with Judge Rugby and bring Sean up there. And Judge, unfortunately, you're still off Twitter at the moment, but you were saying off air that it means you actually get to watch more of the game.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and thanks. Like you don't debate as much during a game, especially when there's like quite a few controversial calls. So I got to watch a little bit more, but normally I watch the game afterwards again to try and pick up a few little things. But I did really pick a poor weekend to be off because it was a cracker.
It certainly was, and your man Damien Dialenda also performed. Let's go and introduce now the Couch Critic. Couch, welcome to the show. Good to have you on.
How's it, Brent? Thanks. Yes, nice being here again. And Tala's probably got to look out because, it seems the longer you're on these kind of shows for Good for the Game, eventually you get banned from Twitter. Eh?
That's it. I mean, you could certainly tell Sean a thing or two about being banned. You never did get your Couch Critic Twitter handle back, and you pretty much had to, I think you had the original handle to start with, but you just had to kind of channel everything into that one. But it's quite demoralizing because Twitter follows take a long time to sort of build up. And I think, both you and Sean were saying the problem is you're not dealing with an individual. It's sort of like a machine that you're dealing with, trying to see if you can get back onto Twitter, which is a problem.
It's definitely not ideal. And as you say, the big thing is the following, trying to build that back up it's no joke.
Excellent. Well, let's introduce Tyler now. Tyler Masutu, 77 there on Twitter. And last time we had him on the show, we didn't have his face. And now we can put a face to the voice, so to speak. Tyler, great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, awesome to be on the show and for people to see my face as well.
Excellent.
And I hope I don't get banned on Twitter after this.
That's it. And just welcome to the guys as they'll start drifting into the live chat. Andre, great to have you there with us, Andre. And of course, we've got this nice little feature now. We can bring some of the comments up onto the page as well, although it does tend to hide the two people who are at the bottom of the screen. But I guess, Tyler, we got the two good-looking guys on the top, so there's no real...
I think that's quite fair.
I don't see any problems there at all. Guys, let's get straight into the action now. I mean, a brilliant weekend of rugby. And one of the things I started thinking about during the game was just, first of all, the hooker position. And let's start in the front row of the box. But I'd like to actually start with hooker, just simply because that really, to me, was what I named the show and that sort of stuff. And that is Bongi up against Marx. Now, Bongi had an excellent game. And then Marx came on, and I thought he did excellently off the bench. Now, a while ago, we probably would have been saying, without a doubt, it's got to be Marx starting and Bongi coming off the bench. But I ran a little Twitter poll, and I'm just going to bring it up here quickly. Hopefully the guys can see it. And here's the Twitter poll that we ran today. And look at that even split. We got 140 votes, which is not a bad little sample. And we got Bongi to start 52% and Marx to start 48%. And I'm quite intrigued by that because it certainly shows that there is a little bit of debate around this one. And Sean, let's start with you on this. Obviously impressed by Bongi on the weekend, but do you think he's done enough to perhaps force his way into the starting team?
And I have no problem right now with either of them starting. I think that it's that close, and it was pretty evident with the poll. I think guys are starting to see Bonambi's value a little bit more than they did in the past. I think that he's offering the same as what he was offering, and I think he's just been a little bit more consistent, and he's maybe upped his game in a little bit of places. But I think Marx has fallen off where he was, and that's why Bonambi's been highlighted a little bit. I think they're both excellent, but I have a little bit more. There's a little bit more set piece stability with when Bonambi's there, and that's where I would prefer to see our starting hooker be. It all depends on the balance and how we play with who's going to fetch and whatnot. But I've always said that Marx is not the best hooker in the country. He's probably the best rugby player, but he's not the best hooker. So Bonambi's been the best hooker for some time. He did wobble a little bit last year, a little bit when he came back from injury. He was so, but he's very, very comfortable with starting and finish the game, as is Marx. So we're in a very, very good space with both of them.
We are. Sean, before I bring the other guys in, I just want to share a little bit of a theory that I've got, which I've sort of just developed over the last week. I've noticed when Marx comes on, and he comes on there with flow as well, I mean, we seem to pick up the number of steals we get. And I've got this, I'm starting to wonder if maybe, and I don't know if there would be stats to support this, but that's, you need your good fetchers on almost at the end, towards the end of the game when people are getting tired, because perhaps the defenses aren't as quick to clean out and that sort of stuff. And you get a lot more turnovers. And for me, I'm looking at this, I'm saying these two guys, there's really little to choose between them. I wouldn't really argue with Rassie, whichever he goes. But I look at it and go, there's two equal players here. I do feel that Marx, just the way he plays in terms of fetching, and that adds a lot when he comes off the bench and perhaps can turn over a few more balls. Do you think there could be any merit in that?
Yeah, definitely. I think from Francois Lowe's side, he really boxes smart, is that when he goes in for the steal, 9 times out of 10, he will slow the ball down significantly or win it or get a penalty. He's really, really good that way. He does pick his battles quite well. I think both of them coming on is absolutely must be hated by the other side. So, yeah, I do think it adds a bit of value. I also think that Bongi's also done relatively well with Kwagga on, even though Marx played with Kwagga on the field last week against the All Blacks. I think with more of an out-and-out guy going to the ball, they will make it. I think also, I don't have any stats to support this, but I feel that if you watch Ireland, if you watch CJ Stander, it feels like he makes more yards over the gain line in the second half. And I think that kind of relates to what you're trying to say is that the guys get tired and the guys keep pumping through. Even though CJ has played the whole game, he seems to come into his own and smash over the gain line a lot more in the second half. And I think, when the guys get tired, the big boys come into the game. And I think that's key. And when you've got a guy like Lowe and Marx coming on that are fresh, it must be terrifying.
Certainly must. I mean, as I say, to me, I look at these guys as very much equals, and the fact that you can almost play them each half a game is quite interesting. Tala, I know you said when I put this tweet out, I think it was during the game, I said something along the lines of, I'm beginning to think Bongi to start and Marx off the bench, and I think you retweeted it with a comment. You said, listen, I know someone has been saying that about 2 years ago, and I'm guessing that someone was you.
Yeah, I think for very similar reasons to what you said, Brent, it's the same reasoning I have. I think as the New Zealanders have led us with this, like there's players that are much better as impact players, and there's players that are much better that start the game to establish it. And we've seen with the New Zealand team, as soon as the 15 minutes goes on, then like in 2015 World Cup, the Bowden Barrett would come on and change the game. And I think having people like Marx, Kitsoff, just to expand the conversation, Marx, Kitsoff, Francois Lowe, and Herschel Yankees coming on and making that impact and just quickening up the game, I think that would be a lot better prospect than having, Bongi and Beast, who are maybe a little bit more, not slower, but they may be a lot more just more on the basics than sort of being able to sort of make that impact in the last 30 minutes. So there's no shame in saying Marx might be a better impact player. I don't think it's anything to say badly about his game. I think he's still one of the best hookers in the world. I still think he's definitely one of the biggest sort of impacts that we have, like in the ruck and even with his carrying. But as we've said, Monambi's really playing really good rugby. And he does, I think even in the scrums, I think we saw that front row from this weekend. I think it just offers something a little bit extra of just being just a little bit better in the scrums. There's not too much of a space or distance between the two front rows, but it's just a little bit better in the scrums, just a little bit more sure in the lineouts, and that's good for the first half. And then for the last 30, 35 minutes, throwing on Marx and Kitsoff, look, I don't want to be that opposition.
Yeah, you're right. There's absolutely plenty of depth there. And Couch, to bring you in here now, I mean, the reality is these days rugby is a 23-man squad game. So to Tyler's point there, I mean, there's just because you're a great impact player, that's not saying anything bad about you. I remember the days of Bobby Skinstad. I mean, Skinstad did a lot of his best work off the bench, but he was good enough to start as well. But if you've got two sort of evenly matched players, you'd argue then the one who might make the most impact off the bench should come on in the second half, and that's his role in the team, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, Brent, I know it might sound corny these days, but they've gone over to that, calling the guys finishers and instead of just calling them replacements, because it's not like you're just replacing a guy because he's injured or because he's tired. You're literally coming on to come and make an impact. Or actually, I think impact players is always the best description of it. And you can see that where often the public is moaning and saying, but listen. This weekend might have been the example that Trevor's having a great game, or even let's say Beast was having a very good game, and yet he still gets pulled off the 60 minutes or 58 minutes because they just see that is the optimum time for the prop to be on and then to be switched around. So I get where perhaps you keep a hooker on because he's really in tune with his line out throwing, but otherwise you want to get those fresh legs on almost before it's time, before he falls off the cliff of his top performance. The only thing I'd like to say is that I don't think necessarily the scrums are better off with Bongi. I think a hooker makes a big difference in a scrum, but I don't think Marx I think he's a very good scrummager. So I think with him playing between Beast and Trevor, it will pretty much be much of a muchness. And it's actually quite strange that Rassie has gone for this setup where he's decided that listen, these three play together and these three play together. He hasn't interchanged that, and I would have actually liked to have seen him go for Marks in between the other two guys and just swap it up a little bit. That if something happens that they've worked in different combinations there instead of just this set 3 and this set 3. So that's the only thing I would have liked. But obviously this weekend I want to see something a bit more different than just that. And then on the argument, you can go both ways. Again, if you say that Marks is a better fetcher, which obviously is than Bongi, don't you want to give him more opportunity? I hear what you're saying, that you do get, I think it's not necessarily that you get more steals. I just think it's almost like steals are highlighted at the end more. You feel it more because it's, listen, pressure on in the last 20 or 15 minutes, guys pushing, and all of a sudden Franchalo comes on and he wins that turnover, and then everyone remembers it, and it's key. But meanwhile, I think this weekend and actually in our setup, Dwayne Vermeulen is our key over the ball player. That's the way we do use Kwacha a little bit as that, but he's more, doing the dirty stuff and putting in a lot of tackles. And I feel Dwayne I think he picked up about 3 steals, and that was all in the first hour, And Crenshaw, again, he came on this week, and this week he wasn't as spot on. He gave away 2 penalties, and I don't think he made a steal. So it's always going to be a bit of a toss up in terms of that. You're always going to do a fine line as a fetcher. And I still think, I've said Malcolm Marx to me is the MVP of world rugby. I'd pay him the most of any player around. I think he's a dual player. He can play 2 or 3 roles, but he could also be like your Dane Coles, your finisher. He can play a little bit wider, and that's a role that Bongi doesn't really play, where he's got a little bit more skill and he could roam a little bit freer. And as you say, there's a little bit more space. So there's definitely an argument for using him late in the game. And for years I've been a fan of Bongi. I thought he had the physical ingredients, and he just needed to do a little bit of refining to make him a class act. I think it was 3 seasons ago there was a bit of a toss-up between him and Skara almost about who's going to be the guy who gets elevated into the Bok mix. And I had the feeling that, just in terms of the ingredients that Bongi brings, he's going to be the more likely to succeed. And I'm glad that he's used it, and he's channeled that energy well, and I think he's got a huge impact there, and I'm loving the way he plays. So I don't really mind either way, but I do feel there's pros instead of pros and cons to this argument.
Yeah, certainly a nice position for Rusty to be in. Sean, let's go to you now. Let's talk, and we can perhaps generalize, because the balance of the pack, the front row, the locks, let's talk tight 5. Any other big positional battles there, or do you think we got guys that are settling in? In my opinion, the sort of tight, the front row is a little bit like the locks. It almost doesn't matter too much who you put in there.
Yeah, totally. I think our 6 players that will be in the front row for the next year and a bit are pretty much settled. The fifth prop going through to the World Cup is going to be an interesting shot. In terms of locks, I think we're doing fine. I'm just very interested to see how we're going to balance things out. Is Morstead, will he go as a lock, or someone who can cover flank as well, or will Peter Steptoe cover that main role and then allow someone like Marcel Coetzee to come with? I don't know. Like that's where the interesting space is going to come for me. But I think in terms of locks and the front row, I think we're pretty much sorted. We're going to miss out on seeing a pretty dominant start from one of our locks not going to the World Cup. Like, it's a numbers game, so someone's not going. But other than that, I think we pretty much settled in the front row for the squad, and it's pretty exciting. You can't really complain about it. You can't complain whoever starts or whoever is benched, and it's great to be in that space for a change, as opposed to, you know, not wanting to play the guy on the bench or the second or third stringer because we're scared we've never seen him before. You know, like, we're in a very comfortable space.
Yeah, it's a good space to be in. It's certainly a space South African rugby hasn't been in for a while. Tyler, I think you said on Twitter this is probably the best performance you'd seen since sort of 2014. And a lot of it was built on tight five dominance. I mean, they absolutely monstered Argentina in the scrums there. What are your thoughts? Any other thoughts for us on the tight five?
I think the only big, like as Sean just mentioned as well, the only real sort of question for the World Cup squad is probably that fifth prop. Who do we take? Do we take someone that can play both positions? Is Nyakane probably the person that's going to be that utility prop? Is Vincent Koch, is he still in the mix for the fifth position, for the fifth prop position? Is Thomas du Toit going to be there? So I don't know if there's been anything said by Rassie for this weekend's game, but I would personally play maybe a second stringer team and just give those like questionable players just one last shot at trying to make the World Cup squad rather than playing the first team again. I think the first team is quite settled. We know who the combinations are. The other one, I think, in terms of the tight five, I think is Franco Malherbe. I think he might be in a bit of trouble now in terms of making the 23, because if he's not starting, I'm not 100% sure if he's the best impact player on the from the bench. Like, the first time he came on, he was standing sort of near the pillar, and I think it was Issa or Matera, one of the two, just blasted past him quite easily. Obviously, he's a prop, but it was just, Malherbe's just obviously not the most mobile prop in the world, to put it lightly. So if he's not starting, he should, in my opinion, I don't think he should be someone that we put in the 23. Then someone like Vincent Koch should probably be coming in, or Thomas du Toit. So it'll be interesting to see what they do for the final game now. Like, I think there's no real reason to play the likes of Beast and Nyakane and Bonambi, even Marx and Kitshoff, and let's see with the rest of our prop stock and our front row stock who's there. And then for the locks, I think Snyman could get a nice full game. Lua Diaga can come in, and then let's see them also just get a bit of game time before the World Cup.
Excellent. Couch, let me bring you in there. And you pretty much touched on the tight forwards already, but maybe just talk a little bit about the loosies as well.
Okay, Brent, I'll get there now. I just think the interesting thing there is I don't think Rassie really saw this whole Trevor move kind of coming. You know, Trevor's just blown everyone out of the water, and you know, he was always going to be a France man, and all of a sudden Trevor is in there, and now it just shakes things up a little bit, because as Thala said, I mean, Malherbe, he doesn't make he's not the impact player off the bench. To me, it's like, you know, you have to first decide who you're starting, and then you got to decide on a bench. It's a different kettle of fish. It's a different mindset. You shouldn't just say, okay, these are my two props. You got to say, this is my starting prop, and then consider whether there isn't someone who can offer something better. So it's actually going to be probably Koch getting a run this weekend, and that's going to be a big game for him to really try and push for inclusion and maybe show that he's got something. But I just think Rassie's fixed on Malherbe, and now the default position is that Malherbe will be the bench tight end, and I don't think he offers that much to come off a bench. And actually, the interesting one there would have been like taking a Thomas to the World Cup, because I mean, firstly, he's obviously going to be worth something in the future, and he's definitely the most versatile prop in terms of being able to do loose head and tight head of everyone. But I still think it'll just be Liso getting a run this weekend with Koch probably, and then he'll just revert to some of the probably France again on the bench and Kitshoff or something like that. And Koch will go as the third prop, because usually you revert to a tight head if you don't have someone who really can play both, then you'll rather take an extra tight head. And you do have Trevor that could do it in a, you know, if you really get a emergency on the day before game or something like that. So that should be the setup there. And then locks, I agree with the guys, Luit and RG probably to get a go. And as Judge said, you know, the issue is just going to be there. How are they going to carry all four locks which is probably unnecessary because you've got Peter Steff who can cover. So it's going to be a bit weird there. And I mean, he is a good fan of Luat and Archie. He's shown is in the setup, so it's going to be a tough one. And then in terms of the Lucies, I think Kwacha has done nicely, and I think he's surprised probably even Rassi there. So he seems to be in the mix, and the guy who's in trouble is obviously Marshall at this stage. Francois Lowe, he likes to. I see Kulisi has been called up to the squad, and he's going to play this weekend. So Sia is going to take over 6, and it'll be nice to see. I hope he plays Kwacha on the bench and tries to use him a little bit more dynamically, and tries to see what he can do. And hopefully starts Marshall at 8. And, you know, you got to have a plan B at 8-man there that he hasn't really shown us yet. And then again, 7, maybe reach Elstad there or something to try and see what we have at 7 after Peter Steff. Because, I mean, Peter Steff doesn't have to play again until the opener. He's banked in, and we got to wrap him in cotton wool. So, yeah, those are the loose. And, I mean, I think an important factor, we've talked about a lot of guys in social media and Rapport and the newspapers and whatever, but I think Dwayne Vermeulen was on top form this weekend, and that was important. You know, it's good to, on the other side, you've got a Kieran Reid who people are worried about a little bit in terms of getting to his top form, and it's just nice to see that I think Dwayne really stepped up, and maybe leadership and stuff was good for him, and he seems to be firing on all cylinders, and that's great news.
Right, Sean, let's go to you. I'm just going to mention the guys who watch the show regularly will know for some reason after about 16 minutes, my sound goes absolutely haywire, and I stopped. So I want to try something. I want to try reboot my Wi-Fi. So I'll leave you guys to it, Sean, and I'll leave you going on about the Lucies. And Couch, maybe if you can just guide us through up until the scrum halves. I'm sure by the time we get there, I'll be back. But Sean, any thoughts on the loose forwards?
Yeah, I definitely think Kwacha is going to. Obviously, we kind of knew that he was going to fall by the wayside when Kulisi came back. I still believe that Marcel Coetzee is one of the few guys in world rugby that can play 6, 7, and 8 on the international stage, and he can do it comfortably. And I really want to see him. I'd like to see Kulisi. I'd like to see Elstad on blindside, and I'd like to see Coetzee at 8. That's what my loose chair I want to see this weekend. I really believe that that Coetzee can do the job. And in a World Cup squad, when you've got only 31 players, to have a Lucy that can comfortably play anywhere, for me is gold. So like it's quite an interesting call. Francois Lowe can play 8 as well, and that's obviously in his favor, but I don't think Francois Lowe was not going to go. Initially, I thought it was between Lowe and Coetzee, but I think Lowe's going. So now we've got to figure out what's happening with Coetzee and the others and the rest of the guys. But I'd really like Elstad to get another go, and I'd like Coetzee to get another go. And I think having Kulisi back there would be great. You know, he comes back well after a bit of a rest. I know he's been injured, but he's going to relish having the captaincy back, having the guys together. And I just think with the other two, it would be a good balance. And we've got a couple of really good, hardworking locks as well. So it's going to help the guys out. And I think Elstad, you know, his second game is going to be a little bit more settled. And maybe, you know, he's resigned himself to the fact, or maybe he knew already that he wasn't necessarily going to go to the World Cup, and maybe he can just actually play his natural game instead of trying to change it up a little bit. So that's what I want to see. I agree. I wouldn't mind seeing Kwacha on the bench because he can play 8. We can maybe push him into 8 a little bit later on, but I wouldn't want to go to the World Cup wanting to play Kwacha Smith at 8. I don't think that that's the right call, especially with the personnel that we have already that can cover that position. So for me, Kulisi, Elstad, and Coetzee at 8 is my loose chair to start.
Tola?
I'm assuming Judge also means for the game on Saturday. And I think that's probably the best way to see. I'm a bit wary of starting Kulisi for this weekend. I don't know how much. He probably needs a bit more rugby before we give him 50 minutes against Pablo Matera, who's like one of the best loose forwards in the world. So if he's as you said, he's in the squad. So I'm assuming he might even play from the bench, which is, I think, completely fine. And I think it does seem like, well, Kulisi's, I think if he's fit, he's making it. Peter Steff is the second one, and Dwayne Vermeulen's obviously our first choice 8. And Francois Lowe, the past few weeks, I was a big Francois Blow doubter, and he's blown me out of the water the past few weeks, so I can't say anything bad about him. I think, especially in that number 20 jersey, when he comes on, he's made a massive impact in both games, and he was amazing also in the game in Johannesburg as well. So that's 4 loose forward spots sorted, and I think if we do 5, then it's basically between Coetzee, Kwagga, and Alstad. Like you said, I don't think there's a need to take Alstad, especially when we have Peter Steff and Franco Mostert in our team. And if we take 4 locks, then that's just a waste. Coetzee obviously offers a lot more versatility. I think he's becoming that player that I think we all thought he'd be like 5-6 years ago. And it's a pity that his timing with injuries has just been the worst. I think every time he looks like it's the perfect time to introduce Coetzee, and he becomes like a 50 cap Bok player, then he gets injured at the wrong time. And Kwagga, I think he's played well. Like, I think I'm also someone that doubts whether Kwagga is going to be a world class loose forward in the international game, but he's done well. It would be maybe better to take Coetzee and Kwagga and then drop one of our locks. But yeah, I'm not sure that Rassi's going to make that decision of dropping someone like De Jager. I think he'll rather like take 5 loose forwards then. So I think this weekend might be basically a shootout between Coetzee and Kwagga for that last spot. It does seem like it's heading towards that. So maybe both Coetzee and Kwagga start with Alstad and have Kolisi on the bench or something along those lines. But there's absolutely no reason to be playing Peter Steff, who's probably, if not the best, one of the best blindside flankers in the world. Guy Vermeulen could also do with the rest. So I think the loose forward battle, that 5th, 6th loose forward spot is going to be very interesting what Rassie does with the squad. And like you said, depending on what he does with the locks, there'll be a very, very good rugby player that's not going to go to the World Cup. Like realistically, between Lood, Coetzee, and Kwagga Smith, who I think people would put in their Super Rugby 15 for this year, one of those 3 players is not going to make the World Cup. And that's a good thing in a way, to say that we have a lot of depth.
I just think from my perspective, I don't see Marcel Coetzee, Francois Low, and Kwagga basically going with all 3 of them being 6-8 covers, neither being a first choice 6 or being the first choice 8. So, that's carrying too much. I hear Judge that Marcel can go and cover 7 where none of the others can, but I'm almost with Thala where he'd rather than revert to a Mostert being able to cover 7 or something like that. And you've also got the option of Sia being able to move over to 7 and playing another 6. So I almost think that with Alstad, he's obviously probably going to have another go this weekend. But with that, test run basically not working with him on 6, I think he's probably canned that idea, and he's probably not even going to go with an extra 7 and just basically someone covering there instead of an outright 7 cover, it seems to me. But yeah, that's why I see it. Then onto the scrum offs, guys. Judge, maybe the halfbacks are both scrum off and fly off.
Yeah, I tell you, I think Faf's under a bit of pressure. I think it's one of those positions that Rassie, we've molded a lot and done a lot around Faf, and specifically him over the last almost 2 years, that it's very difficult. I thought it would be impossible to bring another player in with that would give what Faf does and then still manage to do the other stuff pretty well. So, but I was wrong, because we have. I think Faf is playing his normal type of game, but he hasn't kind of grown with the team, and they're getting a little bit more accurate, and he's not. I'm still not happy with the pass accuracy. I still think he struggles a little bit. And then kicking wise, it's definitely a tactic, and it's not that I don't think that he's kicking just purely out of choice. I think it's definitely a tactic. I just think they're not as accurate as they should be. So I think, like Faf is going. I do think that he's starting to be shown up a little bit now, and he's got a hell of a lot of work to do, which I have no doubt he'll be doing. And then very interestingly enough, Eddie Jones has only named 2 scrum halves in his 31-man squad for the World Cup. But I must say, I don't see us doing that at all. I think this weekend, Reinach will definitely get a shot. Will he start ahead of Herschel Jantjies? I don't know. I think if he does start against over Herschel Jantjies, basically means that Faf and Herschel are going to the World Cup definitely, and Reinach needs some game time, which he does. So that'll be quite interesting. But I think there's quite a bit of pressure on there. The nice thing about it is we've got 2 other nines that are in really, really good form and seem to be quite comfortable playing for the Springboks anyway. So if we do lose Faf, it's not the worst thing in the world. I think that's pretty good. In terms of fly half, Andre Pollard's great. Not the best in the world. Everyone's coming out saying he's the greatest fly half ever. And oh my God, did you see him? Like, he scored 31 points in the weekend. He was really, really good. Absolutely. But again, for me, his pass accuracy is not ideal. We wasted a chance against New Zealand where he threw Colby a bit of a crap ball. We wasted another chance this weekend. I just think Pollard's got a little bit of fine tuning to do, but he is getting to where we want him to be. And I think we're in a good space with 10s. We are going to struggle if we lose either Elton or Pollard for now. I know that Francis Steyn can come in the mix, but we've got 2 fly halves that are really good and comfortable and in form, and we've got a great pack going forward. So I think we'll be in a good space. I think Pollard's the best constructor and the best starter of a game for what we want, especially in Test rugby. I think Jantjies is a little bit more like to the line. He wants to play the ball, and that's not necessarily the best way to start a Test match. I think it's a great way to come in and finish off. But Jantjies has shown that he can also start and push through. And then we've got Francis Steyn that can cover there. But I think 10's we're a little bit finished there. We're comfortable with the 2 guys. We just don't want to lose anyone. But yeah, I think we're okay there now. I'm just a little apprehensive about Faf at the moment. I don't know what you guys think. Am I being overcritical? But I just think that maybe he needs to do a little bit more or tighten it up.
Tala, listener, interesting one that Judge says there about England playing 2 scrum halves. Firstly, what do you think about the performance of Cheslin just popping in there, almost as an emergency option, meaning that we've almost got the option of going to the 2 and knowing that he can, again, at short notice, really cover if necessary. What's your thoughts on that? And then, also, do you think you'd make a possible late change there to Faf not starting?
Look, obviously he's probably the biggest impact player or versatile player in World Rugby. He played a bit of 7 for Toulouse in that one game as well, and he backed down on the scrum pretty well. So looks like he can also be a cover at flank. In terms of the scrum half performance, look, that's not the worst pass I've seen from the base. Obviously, he has a lot of scrum half experience from playing in the 7s as well, and it's the taking 3 scrum halves and taking 3 hookers. That debate is almost like with the Cricket World Cup, like do you take 2 wicket keepers or do you hand the gloves to like your best fielder in a like emergency situation? And I mean, Cheslin is at least not the worst 3rd choice emergency cover in the world, but I'm not personally comfortable with it, and I don't know what we'd use that other option for. Possibly if Damien Willems is available, and maybe we take Willems and Geland, or maybe we take 4 specialist wings in Jantjie, Mabimpi, Colby, and Gossi. Maybe that's when we can use that extra position, but I can't find a big enough need for us to use it for that. But at least we have that option, and we saw now in the yellow card, like when Faf got the yellow card, I was thinking, oh, flip, who's gonna put in scrum off? Is Jantjies gonna come on? Then I just saw Cheslin like walk over, and I was like, okay, cool, we quite covered this. That's a big positive. Then just quickly in terms of the Faf debate, I mean, Faf, I think one of the listeners also just said that he puts some big pressure in defense, and he's so key to the Springbok game plan. I think it's basically built on him and his energy and him shooting up and him, doing what he does and being Faf. Like Rassie has done really well in building sort of around Faf's game and his personality. I think the big, and I personally think he had a brilliant game against the All Blacks. His box kicking was great. It was good contestable kicks. We put the All Blacks under big pressure especially Barrett and Ioane with the box kicking. And he hasn't been as accurate, but that's sort of Faf's game. He's not the best accurate scrum off, kind of like the sort of the Marx Bonambi type of debate, where Faf isn't maybe the best, most accurate in his core roles, but Hershey Yankees is. But I mean, people on Twitter saying that Hershey Yankees should start in a World Cup first round game against the All Blacks with 4 caps at that time. I don't think I'd do that. I think that's way too much of an ask. I think Faf is the one that we build around, but I think that it is good now that he does get that pressure from Yankees, and maybe Cobus Reinach has a good game also in the weekend. So it'd be good to see what Reinach has, and I think the Reinach Yankees combination is actually really exciting in terms of throwing the ball wide and seeing a bit of running rugby. So I'm excited to see that hopefully in the weekend.
No, I'm with you on that one, Tala. I also feel that, often with the argument, let's say, for example, the 3 scrum halves is that, you can't do that because, you're unsure of something, like you're unsure about who's your best winger, so now you want to take an extra winger. I think it's a poor excuse, rather have the extra specialist. And I think sometimes people forget. I mean, I know even someone as clued up as Nick Mallet to say that a guy can just shift into scrum half. I mean, people don't understand that a number 9 is literally the only position in the backline who passes off the ground. Everyone else, your whole rugby career, you're taught to catch the ball and pass the ball, whereas scrum half is the only one who actually flat passes straight off the ground, and then obviously being able to have a flat bullet pass to both ends. I mean, a Garth Wright, who was one of the best scrum halves, didn't even have a pass to the one side, and that's where the dive pass came from. So I mean, those are guys who play like years and years of scrum off. So I know we're talking about sevens and being able to, but there are a lot of aspects to scrum off play that it doesn't just come in a season or two, and then you didn't even need to do a lot of box kicking because we didn't have the extra player. But a box kick from scrum off is also way different to kicking an up and under from wing or fullback. So it's a different kettle of fish completely. Judged something on Colby there?
Yeah, it's pretty much sort of echoing what you're saying. But, I have no problem with Colby being there during a game like we did on Saturday, where there was a yellow card and we needed someone. We're not making a substitute. That's awesome. I'm not taking him to the World Cup with any option or any thoughts of him playing 9. Well, firstly, we lose our best attacking weapon we have, and we lose our deadliest guy and our best finisher. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that we compromise all of that cool stuff outside. He also is a great a great assist option. I think, I'm not sure what his assists are or how much he's contributed each time we score. Not necessarily the last man to assist the try scorer, but he's definitely contributed a lot. And one place we will see him in the World Cup is at 15. When he plays at 15, I tell you, everyone's going to have their eyes fall out their head, because he's really in good form at the moment, and he's connecting well. And when he's got more opportunity to deliver, then we'll see it. But for me, it's not even part of the conversation that he should be going as a 9, that we should take 2 and then we can use Colby, because I'll freak out then.
Also, it's actually quite an interesting one, Sean. To me, that was often the argument with a franchise. I know he's actually obviously a guy who has played a lot of scrum off, so it's not quite the same. But you also got to say that what's the guy's key attributes, and when it's pace and a good step, then he shouldn't be a scrum off, because I mean that's not where you want the guy to be able to show his actual best attributes. So that's where I usually come from of trying to decide where guys should play. Guys, I don't think we're going to talk about the centres. I mean, the centres are pretty much a shoe-in at this stage. And then, well done there, Judge. You can brag a bit. Damien Dalenda had a good one, so I'm pretty happy for the boy. And obviously, it was actually good to show Frans Steyn showing some great hands there. I was like, I've tried to hate him for quite a time now, but I'm starting to come round. So it's unfortunate. 2007 is slightly becoming less of a memory for me, so I think I can move on now. And then, so let's hit it onto the wings. We've talked about that. I was pretty keen on Nkosi, and it looks like Rassi's decided now that Mapimpi is the left. Or do you think there's still a chance for Dayanti to come in there, or maybe shifting around with Colby? Or what's your thoughts on the wingers, guys? Maybe Tala, let's start with you.
I think, the wing, it's a very difficult sum. And I think, obviously, we go on the assumption that Colby's now locked in at 14. I think he's done more than enough to justify that selection now. The 11 jersey and then who the extra wing is a very difficult. It's still something that I'm not 100% sure on. I think Yankee obviously had an amazing year last year, and he's probably the best sort of can do something out of nothing player out of the three, Yankee, Mapimpi, and Nkosi. But he's not been playing the past few months. He's been injured. I don't think he's coming back this weekend. It sounds like he's still rehabbing. So he's probably going to come back with pretty little rugby from June till now. And especially at wing, where it's pretty much of a form position, is that's the best sort of position to put him in. Nkosi, I would take, but he's sort of suffering from the fact that Colby's now sort of put himself ahead of him. So he's also now a little bit unsure. I've seen a lot of criticism of Mapimpi. I don't think the things that people criticize him, I don't think he's done anything that hasn't been too egregious. I think people saying he shoots up off the line haven't watched the Springboks last year when the wings have been shooting off the line and being caught in pretty compromising positions. So I think he's the most sort of solid all-round wing in terms of, he's not the worst under the high ball. He's not the worst finisher. I think he's sort of good in everything, while the other two are maybe very good at finishing, but maybe not as good with other skills. Maybe Ngosi's probably the best sort of high ball taker. So I still don't know where I land on this. I think it's sort of dependent on whether Yankee can play in the next week or so. If he can play this week, I think if he plays and has at least a decent performance, I think he plays himself into the World Cup team and probably into the 11 jersey. And probably Mapimpi backing up because he has played more on both sides of the wing. I think, Judge, you probably have watched more Nkosi than I have. I haven't seen Nkosi play 11, so that might be the thing that actually decides it, if Yankee's fit.
Yeah. So my whole thing was when Sabun Nkosi was pulled over to the right. I see you laughing there, mate. When Nkosi was pulled over to the right, I got a bit of a bee in my bonnet because he's actually a left wing. When he broke into the Sharks side, had an incredible season, was on the left, and then they moved him over to the right. And then it took him yonks to get ready, and now he's right. And I mean, he's in form on the right. But now, truth be told, we probably want him to be an 11 again. so yeah. But I think he's a great left wing. I think he's a good wing. I think he's really learned a hell of a lot. And of course, has learned a hell of a lot and basically made that right wing position his own. And we can't ignore Colby now. So we've got to decide what we want to do. For me, Colby must play right wing or fullback. Okay, so we will see how that works out. We will see him at fullback soon, and I hope it's against Argentina, but I don't think he'll play this weekend. But we will see him somewhere at fullback. So, but then it all depends on what's happening on the left, and that's with Tianti's form and coming back from injury. I think Mapimpi's going to hold that position until Tianti comes back, and then he's going to have a game, and then they're going to decide. And last week, I was quite outspoken about Mapimpi because I thought this year he'd really impressed defensively. He'd grown. When he first came onto the scene, he was a finisher, and that was it. And he has, for a guy like, excuse to teach an old dog new tricks. Like, it seems like he's been around for yonks, and he's gone and evolved his game and learned so much in the last 2 years, especially when he's gone to the Sharks. He really, really has grown as a player and deserves his call up. And I was one that said that he deserves the 11 jumper. So he had a bad game against the All Blacks. There's no getting away from him. There's no doubting it. We all have bad games. He had a really good game this weekend. So, I thought he was very, very good this weekend. He's been really good for the Boks last year as well. The only game that he didn't have a good one was the All Blacks this weekend, and now everyone wants to drop him and blah, blah, blah. So for me, he stays. Dianti will probably go as well. I'm sure Dianti will go if he's fit. And then, the right wing, of course, you can't drop him. Like, he really hasn't put a foot wrong for the Springboks for a while. So what are we going to do? Like, are we going to do like the ethical thing and say, like, you must go and you must start because like you were the first choice, but then Colby's coming and Colby's absolutely smashed it out the water. So then at the park, like, what are we going to do? Are we going to leave Nkosi on right wing? I think we will. then where we're going to put Colby, we're going to put him on the bench. For me, I'd rather not, but I think that might be a shout. Otherwise, play him at fullback and maybe give Villy a break. But Villy's trying to play himself into form again. It's a very interesting conversation in terms of how we're gonna sort that out. But Colby must start, and I think Nkosi will start. But again, horses for courses. See how we work it out. Maybe, just maybe, we play Nkosi on the left wing for a game. Maybe. He'll probably play this weekend. Whether he plays on the left wing will be very interesting. But yeah, I don't know how to answer that. That's all I can say is what I feel about it. But in terms of like what's a set answer, I have no idea, because I think we're all in the same boat here.
Yeah, I must say it's a tough one. I just, again, at this late stage and given the results, and it's almost like I don't think Rassi's going into individual performances as much. It's about the set team, and he's not really going to tinker there unless he has to. So it's almost like he gave Mapimpi that chance this weekend, and he took it. I mean, people are going to talk about, but as Tala says, 100%. I mean, the same happened to Janti. Is that that's our system. We've asked the guys to come up, and maybe the odd time they do it slightly exaggerated or something like that, but it's a difficult concept. You make that hit and everyone's happy, and you miss and you trust the cover to go and defend. I mean, that's the system, and unfortunately at times the guy looks bad. But I mean, there's also the one thing about Mapimpi is he's almost got that. You don't like to make a comparison, but that Abanatine type of hunger. He sniffs out a try. That's that little something that you can't teach. He just knows his way to the line, which is, I mean, I like that hunger in a winger. He just somehow gets himself over the chalk, and we saw there at the end in this past game as well. He just cut right through there, and those are incredible things. But I still think, I'm a Nkosi fan. I think in the one outing he was superb, and it was a bit of tough luck. And I would have liked to have seen him have a go this past weekend at 11 and just show Judge that don't worry, you can just carry the ball in the other arm, and come on, it's not that complicated. So I would have liked to have seen him have a go. But as I said, I think Rassi's almost made up his mind. And I think also the big thing there is, to me, you've got one shot. If Janti doesn't jog out, then I think he's missed the boat. I know he was part of the system, but I think you got to have like almost a cut-off time, and that's maybe something that the All Blacks are also toying with at the moment. It's different if you're a Eben Etzebeth or a 50 Test cap player who's got a heck of a lot of pedigree against the guy who's just been around. I mean, I'm a great fan. To me, he was the starting left winger for the Boks. Without a doubt. But if he can't play this weekend, I mean, it leaves you with only the Jap game, and I mean, you can't be wondering by the time that Japan game comes around. It's I mean, I think you in any case have to have your squad down before that, because I know Hansen was talking about 3 weeks. So I think it's pretty much, if you don't jog out this weekend, then it's all she wrote. So it's definitely going to be rotated around those three. But yeah, it would have been nice, and maybe this weekend we can see something just in terms of either Nkosi or Colby getting a chance on 11, just to see if Janti isn't fit, to see who can make it work on the other wing. Then just on the fullback, I must say that's still a little bit of a concern. Again, it's the same argument as Faf. There's just that's Billy's Rassi's man. He's not going to drop him now. He's a major part of the setup, and he's a major part of the system. I think he had a quiet game on the weekend, but by Billy's standards, maybe a quiet game isn't a bad thing. Sometimes if he has a quiet game, it means he didn't make a lot of trouble, which is pretty much a good thing. So maybe he's pretty much been steady thus far in the internationals, which, I mean, we can't be complaining about that. But I just like to see, obviously we'd probably get Geland, but we'd like to see some backup getting a go, and really having confidence in whoever's going to be next in line as the fullback. I don't know if you guys Tala something on the fullbacks.
Just so I think with Leroux, he's in a, I think he's playing to a point where I think you'd say he's about a 6 and a 6.5 out of 10 in the past 2 weeks. And it's sort of the point that you just made now, Couch. Like, if he's not that involved in the game and not messing things up, I think that's actually a positive, because I think Villy's a big confidence player, and he had the same sort of trend that when he joined Heineken Meyersbach team. A fantastic first year, and then once people sort of worked him out, it was a bit more dicey, and he tried to take too many risks, and it didn't come off. I think it's not this, but what's happening, I think he's a bit better because he's at least a bit better at the basics. He's at least a bit better in terms of covering and just sort of calming down the game. And I mean, I'd love to see Colby at 15 and see how that would look. But I think in terms of the game in Yokohama, Villiers is going to be the starting fullback. I don't think there's too much that can change with that. Maybe actually, that was something that I tweeted, I think, yesterday. I think maybe LaRue will get better with more game time. So maybe we kind of have to play him on Saturday in fullback. Then with Khalan, just to make a quick point about the wings, I think he might be someone that we could take as that third option wing, because he can cover wing and fullback. If Rassie, for example, isn't confident about Colby covering fullback. And then I think you also even can throw someone like Franz Steyn. Like, is he someone that can be trusted at fullback? So there is a few question marks that I think needs to be answered on Saturday. So it looks like we all now, we all think that Rassie's going to experiment a little bit on Saturday. So I hope he does, because if he doesn't, there's a few, not major, but pretty big questions about, who is the backup in this position, who is going to come in if there's something happens here. So maybe LaRue needs more game time at 15. Maybe we need to see Franz Steyn at 15, or Colby, or Gelant. I love Gelant. I'm a big Warwick Gelant fan, but I wouldn't put him in my World Cup squad, just simply because there isn't really space, and he almost needs to play Villy out of the team in a way if he wants to make it.
Cool, Judge. You want to get in on the fullback situation there?
Yeah, I think I agree totally. I think Villy needs a little bit of time. Like, he hasn't really put a foot wrong, and he's been played a little bit better this weekend than we did against the All Blacks. Two totally different games, and one obviously a little bit more open than the other. But he hasn't made errors, and I think that was the big thing. Is he got notes? He's recently been getting noticed more for the errors he's making versus the spark he's giving. So that's the big thing that I think is going to change for him. And same with Faf. I do feel against the All Blacks, Faf definitely settled a little bit. So maybe they reeled it in a little bit and said, listen, you guys just got to calm it down a bit. You will get there. It's a process, and you will get there. Trust the process. And I think, I think a very similar things happened with Franz Steyn. In the past, when Franz Steyn got brought into a squad, we were like, he's going to save the day. We were so, every player that came in, he's like, no, this is our savior. He's going to be the next Springbok guard. And every time we bring someone in, like a Bismarck, or we bring back Francois Lowe or something. But now we've set up a place where there's actually a team and a squad, and the guys are not expected to carry everybody and the nation. They're actually just there to do their job, and everyone adds value with the way it goes. And then if you got a little bit of spark to add, you do it, and that's the way it goes. And I think that's why we're in such a better place. But an interesting thing that I saw, like, in terms of just going back to the wingers, in terms of like strike rates and stuff, my Pimpy, in the 7 tests he's played, he scored 5 tries. So that's 5 tries in 7 tests. And I know we're talking mostly defense, but like, he's pretty deadly on the starts. And of course, he's got the same. He's got 5 tries in 7. And then Deante's got 6 tries in 13, which is pretty similar. And then Colby's got 3 tries in 9 matches, but I think he's got like 600 assists. So tries that Colby scores doesn't really matter. So, I think that's the thing. With regards to 15, I must say I wasn't that impressed with Gelant. I know what he can offer, and Gelant is very much a player. He is a momentum player, and he does need to play more. We haven't been playing him enough, and at the rate that he normally gets back in the mix, he needs 4 or 5 games, and we don't have that. And I'm not going to experiment that at the World Cup, so that's a bit challenging. Having said that, and I think it's too late, I wouldn't mind seeing Dylan Lates having a look in. Again, it's too late now, but under Rassie and the way things are working now, I wouldn't mind seeing how he comes in, because he fills in that role where he distributes and stuff, but that is too late. So 15 for me is a challenge, and probably the position that I'm the most worried about in terms of injuries. Colby can play there. Francis Steyn can play there. I think Colby could easily start there. I prefer if France didn't start there. But to be fair, he played quite a bit during the top 14 at 13 and 15, which are both relatively speedy and positional positions, and he handled relatively well. So I can't see how he'll be horribly out of place, and he's got a massive, massive boot on him. So like, that really does add a lot of value to a side. So I think 15, we're okay. I think moving forward, we maybe not so much, but for the World Cup, we should be fine.
I must say, I actually thought the best backup or alternative option to 15 was going to be Colby, and I mean, as Tala said, he's pretty much made 14 his own now. So I think that's almost been scrapped. You know, he's been so good on the wing, and again, as Judge said as well. No, there's not enough time. It's the same. Luckily for us, you know, Yankees has almost, you know, blown people out of the water in those 2-3 tastes that he's had. But otherwise, he's nailed on, you know, a Dwayne as 8, a Faf as 9, and a Villiers as 15. And instead of looking for, you know, spreading the net wide and building depth, he said, listen, these are my core players, and I'm giving them as much time to settle into the system and be the leaders I want them to be. And check, he's done that, but it just means with, you know, 2-3 games or 2 games to go, you know, he's not going to be able to build enough depth for someone there to be able to shine. It's going to be almost like a stopgap if someone has to come and step in. And obviously Geland was unfortunate with injury, and again, I agree, to me he's very similar to Willie. He's a little bit up and down, and he's a confidence player. You know, he has to feel that that's where, you know, he should be, and he's got confidence to try a few things, and the coach backs him, and he doesn't have to be scared of failure and those kind of things, and he's sure of his spot, so he doesn't have to try these 50-50s all the time. And that's just a little bit of a problem to me. You know, people have said on social, you know, I'm crazy for the Dylan Leitz argument. I just feel he offers pretty much the same as a Warwick Geland and a Willie Leroux does. You know, he brings a little bit of a magic and a little bit of a spark, but there's also a little bit of that element you're not sure what you're going to get. But to me, Leitz has moved on a little bit from where he was 2 or 3 seasons ago. He's added some maturity to it. So to me, he's reined in that unpredictability just a touch. And I don't think his kicking game, I mean, someone who has been playing a little bit of fly off in his life, his distribution and kicking skills aren't the worst. So I don't think you're giving up a lot to someone like Willie or Geland, maybe the high ball, but I mean, few people have as much guts as Dylan Leitz. You know, he tries to tackle guys, he doesn't always make it, but he puts everything into it. So I don't think you lose a lot, but again, as we've all said, you know, it's too late to try something new, and we know that Rassie isn't going to upset the apple cart. You know, he's a guy he's had faith in these guys, he's built them up, and this is where we're going to go. He's not going to all of a sudden have a shootout guy, and that's where my worry is almost for Marshall Coetzee kind of thing. Has he been involved enough to be able to be included in this trust system that Rassie's got going? Guys, I know we want to talk about the other teams in the World Cup, but I'm wondering whether we shouldn't park that whole discussion for next week after we've had another round of internationals and we've finished off with all the rugby champs. So the last thing, just before we end the show, I mean, we're already almost on an hour, is I just quickly want to have your thoughts on the red card there for Barrett. I mean, to me, it was cut and dry. You can have 2 arguments about the law and whether the law should be there, but according to me, you know, the referee didn't have much of a choice in terms of how it is called lately to say sayonara, you other year. Judge, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Mate, that's a red card. That's well, I don't know what the minimum ban is, 3 weeks, but he won't be getting that. That's probably going to be a 6-weekish ban. All Blacks in an interesting space now with their locks. So yeah, that's definitely a red card. And you know, all the hard done bars out there saying All Blacks get everything and they don't ever get any calls. Well, they got a couple of badass calls this weekend. They got some by the law calls and a couple of others, and we got a couple that went for us as well. So hopefully everyone will chill out a bit. But definitely a red card. I just want to say the Wallabies were incredible. They played probably one of the greatest tactical games I've ever seen them play. They really, worked it through well. So they exploited the chinks in the armor. But yeah, red card. I don't know what the minimum is for that 3 weeks, but I don't know. I honestly reckon he's going to get 4 to 6.
Tola, it was strange, you know. I mean, I've seen Eddie Jones now come out. I see that Brent says as well. I saw Eddie Jones come out and say that it's a shocker. I've seen some ex-players coming out and saying that it's harsh. Steve Hansen almost, if you listen to it, he thought it was kind of harsh, and he's trying. I presume to try and play down the whole ban, because I mean with Brody, we know they could be in serious trouble at lock. Tola, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I just don't understand how people don't see that as a red card, because that's a red card now, that's a red card in 2009, that's a red card in 1999, that's a red card in 1979. Like, you can't shoulder charge someone on their head. Like, it's so that's a bit the frustrating thing about people saying that the game's gone soft and all these other arguments. Like this, it's as clear as day as a red card. If you make contact with someone on their head, you're out. And then in terms of the ban, New Zealand might have to play Patrick Tuipulotu in the game against the Springboks. And as a Springbok fan, you should be super happy about that, because I don't think that's a good lock to put in there. And Scott Barrett has been really, really good the past 2 years, and probably one of the better locks in the world. So this does put them in a very big position. We'll see, because obviously everyone has a nice conspiracy theory about World Rugby and how they favor the All Blacks. So if it's a 2-week ban, then people are going to be, I'm sure, up in arms. I do think very quickly that the ban system should work on, if you play in the All Blacks, you'd be banned for the All Blacks games. So I think it'll be one of the situations where he's banned for 3 weeks, and then they use a few Mitre 10 Cup games, and then he's eligible for the World Cup games. So yeah, that probably won't be the best situation. But New Zealand are running out of locks, because probably after Tuipulotu, it's Jackson Emo, it's Shannon Frizzell. I see someone talking about Luke Romano as well. And I mean, Romano obviously won't disappoint people. I think he's a very solid lock. But is that, I mean, against Etzebeth, that's a really tough ask. I mean, even someone like Vai Fafita might come in. So, All Blacks are in a bit of trouble now coming into a Springbok game. I do think that's the one position they wouldn't want to lose quality people. Very quickly, James O'Connor at 13. I didn't see the full game. I saw just the highlights. But James O'Connor at 13, I think, has changed the equation. I think Australia's now back in the World Cup race.
Yeah, listen, it's hat in hand time for me there. I think the Aussies kind of left me with egg on my face there, but I'll give them another week to try and back it up. You know, teams they can only claim something if they can go back to back. So it's gonna be an interesting one this week. Maybe let's just quickly just like 30 seconds each. Do you guys expect the serious Kiwi backlash this weekend, or do you think we could see another tight tussle in Aussie even being in the shout of the Bledisloe? Let's go, Tala.
I think New Zealand's going to win. I think they might go back to basics. So Barrett at 10, Sonny Bull at 12. The sixth position is also very interesting. Maybe Kieran Reid plays more as a six than he did this week. I think New Zealand will sort of set the standard again. It's not the worst idea to lose now and then get your losses out of your system almost and peak at the World Cup. So maybe that's the All Black strategy here.
I think the All Blacks will come back. They've got a bit to fight for. I really thought that they missed a decent 12, but I do seem to think, and I spoke to Jared about it, when they lost Goodhue, they kind of fell apart a little bit when they brought Lamapi on at 12 and moved Anton Leonard-Brown to 13. So I think that was big. I think James O'Connor was incredible. I think Kurtley Beale was great. Tactically, as I said, they were really, really good. So I think the Aussies are going to put up a big shot. I think the All Blacks, I'm not sure numbers-wise what they need to do to retain it, but the worst part about the All Blacks being pushed so close is that they get to fix it for the World Cup. And the worst part about this weekend is the Aussies have that absolute dogfight in them. and they were crap, but now they're actually start believing, and it's just before the World Cup. So now we kind of basically got two powerhouses back in rugby where we thought we maybe only had to deal with 1.5, or like maybe even just a half. So it's a bit of a tough one. The Bledisloe this weekend is going to be an absolute cracker. I think I don't think the moment will get too big for Australia. I really don't. I think they're going to put in a massive shot, and I think it's going to go down to the wire.
Okay, I was about to hammer down New Zealand -12. So thanks, Judge. It might have taken me off that bet. I must say, I think the big thing that I've heard all this about New Zealand, it's better them getting a wake up call now and leaving their best for the World Cup and all of that. That's absolute crap. I think there are cracks there. I mean, they can still win it. They can still go in as favourites and all that, but they're not where they were. They're beatable. They're very beatable. And as I've said like numerous times, I think it has been 18 months or more since we've really seen one of those dominant All Black performances. And I wonder whether they actually still have it left. I think it's a little bit of a myth. I mean, they can still beat guys and they can beat them narrowly and outmaneuver them, but I don't think there's that dominant Kiwi team. I think it's kind of gone away a little bit there. Often, we've quickly talked about it, is that those nice to have problems. I think some of those nice to have problems have become real problems for Hansen. The whole Moanga Barrett one has created issues for him. He's moved the best fullback in world rugby to wing, and he's just not the same as a wing. He's got a few issues there. Now all of a sudden there's a lock issue. He still hasn't fixed his 6 issue, and then I think slowly but surely the last little while the scrum hasn't been as dominant as it used to be, and at the same token I think the Aussies have come along a little bit in the pack, and as soon as the All Blacks don't almost at least go parity in the pack, then they're not exactly the same team that they could be. So I'm telling you, there are a few cracks there, and we'll see closer to World Cup time whether it starts leaking water. But gents, I think we chat more on maybe where all the teams stand next week after we've seen another round. Brent, can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Earth to Brent.
I've enjoyed watching the show from the studio, so to speak. Yeah, well done, guys. It's been great listening to you chat. I don't know what it is. About 9:15 every night, it seems they seem to throttle my Wi-Fi for some reason. So I think I've got to take something up there with the service provider. But by about 10 o'clock, which it is now, then it comes right again. But anyway, guys, thanks very much for a great show. Tyler, great seeing your face this time, and good having you on the show. Look forward to having you back on again soon.
Thank you so much, and great chat, guys. I think we've solved a few rugby problems here.
That's it. And Judge, as always, good to have you on the show. Just hoping to see you on Twitter. You may have to start a temporary Twitter address just to at least get back into the action.
I refuse. I will fight hard for my one, and hopefully get it back and be back pestering you guys all hours of the day and night. So, but yeah, thanks. Great chat. And I think we could chat another hour and a half, 2 hours on the international stuff, with what happened this weekend, but looking forward to doing it next week. And thank you again.
Excellent. Yeah, great fun. And Couch, thanks for taking over the hosting as well. And look forward to seeing you on Thursday night when we discuss our weekend's bets.
Cheers, Brent. I'll mail you my bill.
Thanks, man. Well, you can see this show's got big sponsorships, so I'll be sure to give you a cut. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Guys. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, and I saw while I'm sitting here, we've just had someone subscribe, so that's great news. Go down below the video, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell, and you'll be notified of all of our videos. It's been good having you there. Very interesting experience for me watching in the back end of the studio. I actually enjoyed it, and the bits that I could hear as well. The nice thing is now I get to listen to the show all over again, and a lot of it will be new to me. Thanks, everyone, and we'll chat next week.